Okay.
I got a message. I got a consent message for the recording.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for a long, long year. Stole many a man's soul of faith. I was around when Jesus Christ had his moment of doubt and pain. Made damn sure the pilot washed his hands and sealed his fate. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guessed my name. But what's puzzling you is the nature of my game.
Oh, how appropriate.
Yeah. So we're studying the devil this evening. If you couldn't catch that from the intro. So where to begin?
Sympathy for the devil.
Yeah.
Let's start. Why don't we start? Let me go ahead and put my glasses on. If I can find them, and then I can type in our readings, the reading questions from Tarot Wisdom to kind of get us started, maybe. This is interesting. So she's got a devil reading in the shape of a pentagram.
Yeah.
And starts with what have I lost, and then she has a devil reading in the shape of horns. What is evil, right? So she has these two different. What blocks me from returning? What illusory chains hold me? What reality holds me? How can I free myself? And what will happen? So I'll go ahead and type in both of those, and that way maybe we can use those questions maybe as a way to, as a place to start. I did a reading earlier today, and the ego card came up, right? And it was actually just reading about a situation, and the ego card came up. And so I have the Angel Tarot. I'll have to go and get it. And it's a great deck for beginners and beginner, intermediate, advanced beginners. They do have the kind of meanings down on the bottom. The system is Rider-Waite inspired, but they do take a point of departure on a couple of different cards. And one of those is the Devil card, the traditional Devil card. And they call that card ego. So we can talk a little bit about that as we move forward in our dialogue, in our conversation. I'll go pull it. It's called a devil reading. So let's do a devil reading. Ooh, oh my gosh, sorry. So the first one is, what have I lost? What blocks me from returning? What illusory chains hold me? What illusory chains hold me? Sorry, I don't mean to. What reality? Oops. What reality holds me. So I thought it was interesting that I got the devil card in that. It was a 3-card reading that popped up. And it was, you know, I've read in our day today, we were talking about that, this card. But the reading I did was really, it's a really good reading that I've started leaning on a little bit more. Because when I move into a reaction mode over a piece of communication that I've received, then it's really important for me to probably pull this reading out and try to put myself into response mode as opposed to reaction mode. Especially when I'm tired, I'm kind of worn thin. I'm punchy. If I didn't eat right, if I didn't have enough water, if I haven't done enough of this, that, or the other, whatever it happens to be, right? Like we all have our own personal cocktail of what needs to be in place for us to feel pretty centered, pretty strong, pretty like, you know, like we can handle the world and what it has to throw at us, right? Well, when that is off for me, it's really important that I lean on this a little more and even more. And it was really interesting because I have another colleague who is getting ready to, is retiring, is leaving. And, you know, a friend of mine recently pointed out to me, we were having this conversation about women and the expectation, or specifically when women aren't nice, right? They get labeled all kinds of different things. And so we were talking about it each other. We're both very assertive. And so we often get the label of not being nice women. And we talked about how that's different from being kind, right? Being kind, being considerate, being willing to help and support doesn't necessarily mean you're nice. And so nice is really about that placating other people's sort of wants and desires and allowing them to run all over your boundaries and to do all this kind of stuff. And when you set your boundary and you say, no, I'm sorry, that's not going to work for me, or back off, or however, right? However you communicate that, all of a sudden you're not being nice. Therefore, you're really typically, I think for women, they're just considered bitches.
Yeah.
And they're horrible and they're all of this kind of stuff. And so this colleague who's getting ready to retire, there is a 15-year gap, right? He's 15 years older than I am. And he has, I think, a particular kind of expectation for people to be nice, right? While not necessarily being nice himself. You know, does that make sense? I mean, it's like if you run over his boundaries, he's gonna let you know, right? But if he runs over yours, you should be okay with that, especially if you're a woman. I think he's also a little misogynistic. And that's not a label I ever attribute to anybody lightly, ever. But after working with this person for so many years, I've come to the conclusion where I'm thinking that he's got a little tinge of that. And particularly does not care for women who hold their boundaries, right? And so in this reading that I did, the 3-card reading, which was like the first position is what I believe is going on. I've shared this before. What I believe is going on, what I think is happening. Then the next card, card number 2, is what's really happening. And then the final card is here's what you can do if you want to do anything about it. Here's something you could do. And so the first card that came up was the 9 of Wands, right? And so the 9 of Wands is like, well, this person's just being defensive, guarding his own boundaries, blah, 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 or whatever, right? He's towards the end of his journey here. He's kind of punchy because he's got stuff, it's his last semester. There's all kinds of emotions, right? That's what I'm thinking is going on. And then what's really going on is where the devil card came up, or the ego card came up, right? And then the final reading, the final card that came up was the 4 of Swords. What could I do about it, right? If I wanted to do about it. And literally in the description of that card, it says, take a nap. It listed all of those things. I'm tired, right? I'm feeling wound up because I'm tired. I'm also needing respite. I'm also needing to take a break. I'm also feeling a little bit, and because I'm burned out, I mean, I'm in the middle of burnout. It's hard for me. It's like burnout is one of the most challenging things to kind of heal from, because you literally have to have a good long healthy break from the thing that's causing the burnout, right? And so it's always very sobering when I do that, but I thought it was so appropriate that tonight we're talking about this, and to think about the devil in the terms of the ego, right? That aspect of the ego that feels as if it's um, um, uh, is what's the point I'm trying to, what's the word I'm looking for, is privileged, right? Privileged. I get to do this kind of thing. And that in its extreme can cause a whole series of downfall behaviors.
Or rather, the ego, more specifically, the ego doesn't see that anything exists outside the ego.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think that there's all kinds of interesting what gave rise to the fall, right? Because the tower is appropriately placed after the devil card, I think, right? That's sort of like, if you engage in this thing for too long, it's going to come tumbling down, right? The ego, I think a lot of times we think of the tower card as the ego card specifically, right? So it's that thing where maybe it's an extension of ego. I don't know. It's that kind of where they sort of, it seems appropriate in both of those places. But yeah, so it was an interesting opportunity for me to sit back and kind of think about that, right? Where are the times in my life where I've allowed my ego, there's nothing outside of this, and because there's nothing outside of this, what I'm thinking is right, or good, or whatever. I mean, it's not even right or good, what I want, right? Feeding my ego all the time, in the long run has consequences, right? So it's 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 tough. It's interesting. I think reading earlier today, did I do the last one? Let me finish typing these in. How can I free myself? Whoop. What will happen? Okay. What have I lost? What blocks me from returning? What illusory chains hold me? What reality holds me? How can I free myself? What will happen? I think one of the, for me, I have a member of my family who has certain sort of mental health struggles, and the mental health struggles have ultimately put him in a place where he's self-medicated, which is not unusual or out of the ordinary, right? And so working with a kind of a type of bipolar disorder, right? And so self-medicating a bipolar disorder is pretty,
That's a nightmare.
yeah. And
Mm.
so I've watched this family member has been addicted to one substance or another for we're talking heart addiction since he was a teenager, and he's now in his early 60s.
Mm.
So has at some point sort of went through rehab and was sober for short periods of time, but the kind of falling back into that. And I know that watching it has been really heartbreaking, right? And to have that kind of experience in your family with your family member, you cannot, there's some days where you want to be able to take that burden away from them, right? And you can't, and it's really, really hard and challenging to watch. And so when they often talk about something like the devil card also in reference to things like heart addictions, where you are in this hard addicted state. That to me is really, I think, that heartbreak too that comes from being out of tilt for too long, you know. So I'm gonna go ahead and write the other set of questions here, which is a double wisdom reading. And this one, what is evil? Oops. What is evil? Why does it exist? Where does it originate? Okay. And then how should we respond to it?
Oh,
Okay. So I didn't do this, but I'm going to. I like that reference to the Lovers card and that connection
Yeah.
with the devil, and then to read that actually the devil is the older of the two, and that, what was it?
Right.
Was
Yeah.
it Wait?
Wait, he worked backwards.
He
Yeah.
worked backwards and then made that. So I'm gonna look for my Lovers card here, because I've been meaning to pull it and I didn't pull it.
I mean, that does, ultimately make sense, because what is especially as we get older, what is the greatest fear in entering a potential love relationship is that it's gonna, deteriorate into something that is in fact imprisoning rather than liberating, right? And so that's extremely appropriate, I think.
and I see it opposite as we get older.
As we get older, that it gets, yeah. So can you guys see that?
Yeah. So that's Hanson Roberts.
Yeah, that's the Hanson Roberts deck. And it's interesting. I have a sort of a Rider-Waite. I think it's a RWS that's over somewhere. And this one has that kind of interpretation of it. Here we go, from this state to this state. And if you look at this as kind of your aspects of conscious, your sort of conscious self, your higher self in the Lovers, right? So looking at it from that perspective. And this, of course, is your base self, right? That sort of base self that has tilted in such a direction or in such a way that we are now no longer, this is a kind of self-imprisonment. Often, I think they all refer to in sort of the descriptions here is that, yeah, you're chained, but if you look at those chains, they're really loose. And there isn't a single, I think this is true for some of the other thing that was pointing out to, where the Devil card has an entirely black background.
Mhm.
Right. And that's something that I sort of noticed, but didn't pay, I'm like, yay, I know this, but I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. And then all of the other cards in the deck that also have an entirely black background. Also talk about the degree to which we sort of self-impose this. So the 8 of Swords, for example, where we it's sort of like that, and a little bit of the 10 of Swords. I've read some interesting interpretations of the 10 of Swords where it's kind of like histrionics, right? That it's really never as bad as we make it out to be. And again, if we just kind of, if we can ground ourselves again, we can see that, oh yes, the ties that bind, or the chains that, the chains that keep us bound to something really are, with the right shift in perspective, will allow us to kind of free ourselves by lifting them up over our head. And I think when I read those, when I read those understandings of the cards, those were really helpful, right? It doesn't always feel that way when you're in those states. It doesn't feel that way at all. But if you can find a sort of touch point or a grounding point and remind yourself that there's potential shifts, there's the possibility of shifting out of it, right? When you shift your focus, shift your perspective, if you what's the phrase? If you sorry, my mind is a little tired. It's a little tired because I'm tired today, and I ate too many sweets.
I did.
Oh,
I did that this week too. I did that.
oh
Was
my
it last
God.
night or the night? One night. All I can tell you is one night this week I ate an entire pack of Paul Newman's Fig Newtons, whatever they're called, the new Fig Newmans or whatever. I ate an entire box, and I was thinking, yeah, and I thought of the devil card, but
Well, and the what set it off, right? The sort of what set that off,
mm,
what sets us into that space
yeah,
that feels like, oh, in this moment, I really need to eat a half dozen cupcakes or a full package of Fig Newmans, or that's, that kind of thing. Whatever the behavior is, right? Whatever the behavior is, however we express that. But I think that's one of the things that what always makes me to sit back. If we had healthier, I think in large part, we live in a culture too that encourages us to keep anything that, you hear the term shadow self or shadow work. It's really, I think, at least since I've gotten re-involved in the sort of esoteric community, the metaphysical community, they talk a lot about shadow work and working with dark goddesses, and the dark goddesses can help you work with your shadow side and that kind of thing. I was part of a Jung group last summer, and our book study last year was the shadow, right? Doing that sort of shadow work. And the idea that really the shadow exists, or and I'm gonna get this terribly wrong, so please forgive me, but this idea that it's the shadow side of our psyche is really about that which isn't allowed. It's a life unlived,
mm,
right? And the series of choices, I'm going to use the term loosely, that come into play that keep that the shadow aspect of self always in the shadow, but it will find a way to express itself. It just will. I think we live, I think, in a culture that has vilified those quote unquote darker aspects of our psyche, darker aspects of our behavior. I think one of the ways that we even talk about or think about things like mental illness, for example,
oh yeah,
right? We make those things to be something that we should be ashamed of, and we should hide them in the shadows rather than talk about them and come up with ways that are healthy, or understanding
yeah.
the behaviors that are associated, right?
Yeah, I know that I fully divulge to my students, for example, that I take antidepressants and so forth, and have off and on for 20 plus years. And as a result, I have a lot of students that will talk to me about it, that say, they struggle very, very intently with their mental health, and a lot of them come from cultures where they cannot talk about that. They can barely mention it in their immediate families. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And we do. I mean, that's an example, right? That's an
Mhm.
example. It's an important example. We have all kinds of examples in culture and society. I think the another one that I think that there's so many. When you think of all the sort of the addictive behaviors that come out, like an addiction to gambling. Where's my guy here? Here is my the everyday enchantment tarot.
What's he doing there? It looks like Liberace. What's
I
it?
mean, he's kind
Yeah.
of, he's in a convertible, probably tearing down the road.
Wrong way.
Yeah, the wrong way. Don't. He's got all of his
Mhm.
money, he's got this bottle of champagne here. And of course, there's the little imps that have been showing up in many of the
Mm.
cards in this deck. Right. So it's like
Mhm.
driving down the wrong way at high speeds with the top down, that kind of thing, engaging in these kinds of really risky behaviors. I always wondered what it was, like we often talk about so many of my, a lot of my friends, their kids are graduating right now from high school. And you think about like, why is it that so many people are attracted to the whatchamacallit, the bad boy or the bad, that kind of archetype, this sort of a little bit of this archetype, right? The devil may care kind of what is it about, because it's true. It's like why are so many sort of drawn to that persona, right? That person who's clearly like breaks all of the social rules, um, goes in and maybe doing these kinds of things. What's so appealing about, what is so appealing about this kind of persona?
Yeah, the Adam Driver character in Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah. It's
But,
like you think about all
yeah.
your bad boys. I'm,
Mhm.
I certainly have had a few that I've dated over the years, and at the end of the day, I'm like, I will choose. And I've had this conversation with other friends, and we're like, at the end of the day, I have a friend who I love her to pieces, one of my colleagues, and she was in her last significant relationship. They were engaged to get married, all this kind of stuff, and he sort of breaks up with her on Christmas Day, and it's just, and he is pretty much the epitome of this, right? So,
Well, the
smokes
devil
pot
does
all day, and
the devil
gets
does
to work.
represent Capricorn, so Christmas Day would be appropriate for
Yeah,
that.
would be right. That was the
Uh,
right day.
but
Um,
yeah.
yeah, he would. What was it? It was this kind of thing where he'd like hang out on the couch and smoke pot all day. Um, you know, uh, but she was engaged. I mean, it was this thing where she, now. So they broke up. Her heart was broken. She was like La Llorona, right? She was going
Mhm.
to office of all of her colleagues, and we were heartbroken for her. She just was so in such a bad place, right? And then she went on a dating jag for like 5 years, right? She dated a whole bunch of people for 5 years. And then through her dating opportunity, she met somebody who was the best and most like the good fit, right? It was just the good fit. And at the end of the day, she married somebody who was not at all this, like the opposite of,
But she wouldn't have gotten to the
right,
person she married without going through all
the
that.
journey
Yeah.
that got her there.
Mhm.
And then at the end of the day, she's like, oh man, I wouldn't trade him in for anything, right? So this is a guy who is he is the sweetest. He is the sweetest, sweet,
Yeah.
sweet,
Well, I
sweet.
mean, when you talk about the shadow or what we repress, and particularly in our Calvinistic culture, is anything to do with sexuality, particularly women's sexuality. homosexuality, alternative relationship structures, any of that. I said for decades, literally, beginning in 1993, my first class I took in undergrad, I said, it was a class called Challenging Racism, Sexism, Anti-Semitism, and Homophobia. That was the name of the class. And I wrote an essay in which I said, if people are upset about gay people having sex, they should just let them get married, because married people don't have sex. It's it's everybody else. Yeah. Because what happened? Because unfortunately, a lot of times when people get married, they marry for that ego reason, right? They marry for that, seeing how people will fit together according to how the ego sees the world, and so on, and in the world according to the ego, the tower that the ego is building, right? And so they get their partner that fits into that space, and then as they grow older, as they have that spiritual awakening, whatever, it doesn't work, and so they can either stay chained in that way, or they have the tower, which they have the tower moment, which is painful but liberating. you know so and a lot of us, I said a few years ago, that divorce is just something that happens in your 40s. I mean, and you can say that, and I think a lot of people, I know, and because we get to that stage in our life where we have to figure out, okay, is this really, what I want? Is this how I want to spend the next 15 to 20 years of my life? I've already invested 15 to 20 years. Do I want to invest the next 15 to 20 years, and
Well, and not just the 40s any longer, right? I mean,
well, because we're living longer. Yeah, I mean that's
we're living longer,
we're living
and
longer. Yeah.
they're finding it's so interesting because I read something a couple weeks ago. I want to say maybe it was even last week, to be honest. About folks who have been married for really long periods of time. So they've been in relationship with each other in a marriage for like 30 plus years. Some folks 40 years, almost 50 years of marriage, and they're fine, and they're divorcing.
Wow. See, I know
Yeah.
of people, I have met couples, and this is not an exaggeration, where they knew each other for a week and got married, and they've been married for 50 years. And it's like that they just met the day before and they're completely in love with each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but that's certainly not, I know like two couples like that, right? So out of, you know, however many and also, and people assume that, because you're married or whatever, that you have this sort of very rigid thing. I know for example, this is if anybody's watching this who knows me now, this is nobody that I'm in contact with now, because I know they're going to try to put a face to this. But I know of a gentleman who his job is he's a music director at a church, and he's openly gay, and so on, but he and his husband often would bring home people from the club, and and he's ardently Christian, and that's, it's a, but he and his husband would bring home people from the club. Now that is a gay community, poly and alternative. That is more the norm in the gay community for various reasons. But it's so people just assume that, like for example, people assume I'm gay, which I'm not. I don't know how many people assume
You're
that
like,
I'm gay,
what?
but anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I do have a friend who he has a very complicated sort of relationship with his own with his own gayness. I don't know, he's gay, but doesn't want to be.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah.
That's a really hard thing. But
That's really,
when
yeah.
he was allowing himself to express that, he lived in a different city. he was in a relationship, and then they were in a committed relationship, and then one day his partner came home and said, I kind of want to open our relationship. And so he tried it for a little while, and then he's like, it didn't work for him, right? It didn't work for him.
Yeah.
And so
Not,
he
not
was
everybody. Yeah.
yeah, he was so torn up. I think he was so torn up by the tower moment, right? That, and then the tower coming in, all of that he was so torn up that he said he just sort of swore off feeling.
Yeah, and I
Right.
know people that have done that for various
Right.
reasons
Yeah.
also.
And so for him, it was like, I'm not going to engage in being gay anymore.
But the shutting off from feelings is also the devil, right? I mean, that's also an aspect of that, but a lot of people will use the polyamory, the institute, which is what happened, in a situation very close to me, where it was used as, ultimately, as pointed out by a therapist, it was used as a bridge to a new monogamous situation for the it wasn't, oh, we're gonna, it was used as a bridge. It was used as a bridging, you know which is still arguably and agreeable, and I agree on my part, it's still more ethical than sleeping with somebody behind somebody's back, but it's not true polyamory. Like, true polyamory is very few people
Open.
can do. Some people can, but very few people can do.
I
um
yeah, well, I mean, there are all kinds of, there's a small cottage industry of publishers that publish books on how to manage your jealousy and
oh yeah, of
things like
course,
that,
yeah,
because
yeah.
that sense of it elicits all of those kinds of emotions, right? And that's, I think, has so much to do with how our culture, but probably to our wiring as well, a little bit of our how we've evolved. um, there was a really interesting article I read about jealousy and what function it really does serve. Um, and it can be a really healthy thing. It can be a really healthy emotion. You just have to keep it in
Well,
balance.
that gets to, I mean, that gets to one of Pollock's points in, I think it was Tarot Wisdom, as opposed to 78 Degrees. I can't remember, but where she's talking about how a lot of people, a lot of the way that people get into the devil space is that they make this complete separation from the spiritual versus the bodily, and where they say one or the other doesn't exist, and then but she says, she has this statement in there, if the body is what imprisons us, can we not use the body to set us free as well? And so what you're talking about jealousy being healthy, that could be, also be used as a liberating, as a tool of liberation as well. But again, you couldn't, most people can't just do that. They have to be guided by a therapist or guided by,
You've got to be willing to do the work, right?
Yeah.
Because that's not just a sort of snap and all of a sudden I'm in an emotional place, or I'm in a mental state, or I'm in a that all of a sudden that's the case. It's not instantaneous. I mean, I do think with a lot of practice, we're able to develop touchstones that we can rely on that help us to shift and reframe more quickly, but certainly not at the beginning. It's sort of like, I want to use meditation as an example, because meditation, I think, is a really good example in that at first, when you first try, I know when I first sort of tried or was practicing meditation, my mind, it was anxious producing, as opposed to sort of, that sort of like, oh, meditation helps you to kind of sort of, zen out a little bit, right? That kind of thing. And so, but it took a while. And with time, eventually I got there. I just sort of sat and committed to that every day. And my meditation practice right now is for shit. So the thought of sitting down and getting back into my meditation practice on a regular basis is actually a little anxiety producing for me right now. right? But I also know that the only way I'm going to be able to, let's put it this way, because I had a meditation practice, and it was something that I committed to, I was able to get through things like being, like getting an MRI, for example, which if you've never gotten an MRI before, I don't know if you've had an MRI.
Oh, I've had many of them. Yeah.
Me
You've
too.
had many of them,
I
right?
have two, and the first time was,
It
I
was,
actually enjoyed it.
yeah.
I-
Okay. So some people are like, Kurt, they're like, I just fall asleep in there. I'm not. I mean, it helped me to see that I had a kind of a claustrophobia that I never ever recognized before.
yeah,
And I remember the first MRI that I
oh
finished.
God, me too.
I got out to my car. I don't know about you, CJ, but I started crying. Like
Yeah.
I literally started crying. And for a while there, I'm like, I didn't understand why I was crying. And I didn't understand that this was my own sort of response. I was, a fear response, right? That was happening, but it happened later. And then, part of me also thought, well, the MRI is a if I'm feeling this way, there are others who have probably felt similarly. And the degree to which, if you're sensitive at all, you pick up on all of that kind of stuff hanging around there too. So because some of it felt like my fear and some of it didn't feel like it belonged to me. So that kind of empath's dilemma, right? When you have that moment where you're picking stuff up. And then I had a physician who had a similar response to you. She said she fell asleep, right?
Well, I didn't fall asleep,
She
but
didn't fall asleep, but she fell asleep. She was so relaxed,
Yeah.
she fell asleep. It was not that big a deal.
well, for me, it's the same as like hearing all the mice in the walls and in all the cabinets and stuff.
Yeah, and when I had mice in my ceiling, I couldn't sleep at all.
See, and I start thinking, I hear all those noises and stuff, and I think I start thinking, oh, it's like hearing the mice. It's like I'm wondering what in their in their whole society and what they're doing.
Like,
what
no,
yeah,
no. Yeah, no, I don't know that. Yeah, I'm like, because then where my mind goes is like, how many more are in the, how many can't I see?
Well, and then it's
Oh.
like 3:00 in the morning, and your child, who is a child trying to sleep and go to school, and you have to go to work, and you hear this as a gnawing on the wall or the fucking whatever, like, oh my God, like mentally, it takes you to a very unstable place.
Yeah.
My favorite is when they all squeal at the same time, because I think like a new one comes in. It's like reached the it's like going into Ellis Island or something, and they're like
Oh my God.
they're like celebrating the arrival of
Like, hey,
somebody new, But
well, here's what I will say about, I don't know what to say about Ellis Island, like Mouse Ellis Island or whatever, but because I leaned into a meditation practice and all I did was count my breaths 1 to 10, for a 45-minute, almost an hour, I think, no, it was an hour MRI, 2 back to back.
that is a long time to be in an MRI machine.
They had to do 2 back to back. So they did
That is
one of my brain.
incredible.
They did a brain and they did a neck. And
that is incredible.
Usually, hey, 20 minutes on the in and out, not a big deal, but that was almost an hour. And by the end of it, because I had just did the basic focusing on your breath and counting breaths, in series of 10s, in breaths 1, out breaths 2, by the end of that, I had moved into such a relaxed state, right? But the whole point of bringing that up is that I didn't know how to do that at the beginning, right? It wasn't until I committed to it and developed that to be able to do it, right? And so, again, the whole point of bringing that up was that when we develop touchstones, right? We develop these moments where when we find ourselves in this state through time, making that commitment, and it's not always going to work, right? I mean, sometimes our tools get really battered, right? They get really, really battered. And either we have to sit back and say, well, maybe I'm not using the tool as well as, correctly, or maybe I've outgrown this tool. This tool's just not working like it once did.
So I mean, we all have our sort of pitfalls as far as all that. I mean, for me, it's intrusive thoughts,
Yeah.
and
I have
and so
generalized
that's
anxiety, so yeah.
yeah, so that's. But I believe, my thing with the MRI is that I can only straighten my legs out so far. So the whole thing, mentally about being in there was not that big a deal, but physically after a while, it starts
Oh
to
yeah,
hurt because you
sure.
can't move physically. But I do believe, I think that I went into a state where I was like chanting mantras in my head and different things. But yeah, and
Yeah.
I purposefully tried not to notice how much time was passing. But I know it was not 45 minutes. It was absolutely not 45 minutes. That is, oh man.
When they told me, they're like, we're gonna have to do them. And
Mm.
I was like, and they said you'll be in the MRI machine almost an hour. And I'm like, "Ah."
But see, I even like the dentist drill. Like, yeah, as long as I'm telling you, Aquariuses are weird. Like, I mean, I'm fully like,
You're fully okay. That's too funny.
yeah,
Well,
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, as long as my mouth is numbed up, I mean, yeah, of course, as long as my mouth is numbed up and everything. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting smell. That's an interesting sound.
yeah.
You
Well, I'm
but
sorry. I'm yawning. It's not about you. It's just about me and this. I tried to take a little bit of, I did. I took like a little mini nap, a micro nap, like a 10-minute micro nap before I logged on.
yeah,
And it's going to be an early night for me just because it helps. It's helped, but it's not going to be enough. I'm going to have to probably go to bed early just to make up for my sleep debt.
I still have
But
to do all I still have to do all my meditation. I haven't done it yet today, so I'm gonna do
yeah,
that after this.
yeah.
But
Well, let me, I was going to say that, are there any of the questions that I posted in the chat? Are there any of those that were part of either of those readings that are sort of intriguing to you, calling to you in some way? I'm always drawn to the what is, like the what is evil. That's always an interesting conversation.
well, that's the basis of a
Why
lot
does
of
it exist?
people's entire careers, right? Is to try to answer that question. But
Below.
what I find intriguing about that whole all those, those is because I mean she sets those up as tarot readings, right? So
Right.
when you're drawing the card, when you're laying the cards out, you ask what is evil, and you actually get a card there, and so that's a different way for you to possibly think about the whole concept.
Yeah.
But I mean, just like for example, the Bhagavad Gita, for example, would say that evil really is the at least evil actualized would be doing someone else's dharma, like not following your path. Because to follow someone else's path even perfectly is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because it's not your path,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And to follow your own path even imperfectly is better than following somebody else's path perfectly.
Yeah. It's really a good thing to think about. I know when if I'm following somebody else's path, believing that it's my own,
Right.
right?
And
Because that's what happens, right? You sort of follow it because you believe that it's yours, right?
yeah,
Then you come
or you're
back,
taught that it's yours.
right? Oh, that
Yeah.
too. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Or that you have the right skill set for it, and therefore you should follow this path, or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be, and just how soul sucking that can feel, emptying that can feel. You feel like a shell, or you feel exhausted, or whatever the case is.
It's like when you see when I was a practicing Catholic many decades ago, I saw that there was a priest that was actually ordained a Catholic priest at like 75. Because it took him that long, it took him that long to get back to what he actually wanted to be, when he was like 5 years old. It was like,
Oh, geez, yeah.
you know, and you know, and you see that too. You see people, for example, like my new pastor Arlene is like I don't know her actual age. It's probably around 60,
Right.
and she's being ordained on Sunday, you know. And so this whole like lifelong journey where she talks about being, you know, that age, you know, in looking up and saying, I want to be a priest. I don't want to be a nun. I don't want to be, you know, but she was she was taught that women can't do that, you know. And so, you know,
Oh, yeah. That makes me think about so many different things that have kind of, you know, I think about late bloomers and
mm,
where that phrase is so, I think it's so grace filled if you allow yourself the compassion to
uh,
come into whatever it is you come into at its own time, right? And um, if it takes somebody 60 or 70 years to be able to do that, what a beautiful thing. Like I think about and we see this every now and then. You'll see these news articles where um grandmother or great grandmother is graduating at the very same time that,
mhm.
you know, grandchild is graduating, that kind of thing, or they cross the stage at 82, that kind of thing. You're like, yeah,
Or there was an African American gentleman a number of years ago. He was in his 70s or 80s that had 7 PhDs. You know, just because, you know, and it was the situation where, you know, the kids went to school, the grandkids went to school, and you know, and then they had money, and so they, you know, and so he started, you know, going to school and just kept. And I have a friend who was an admiral. He's a retired admiral, and
mhm.
also helps to run a medical school here in town, and he is always getting a new master's degree.
Yeah,
You know, it's like that's what he does for fun. So I think right now he's getting like another degree in divinity or something, you know, just he's always getting a new master's degree.
I did want to go back and get some more graduate work done, but then I talked
But
myself out of it.
the money would be the reason why
Yeah, that's
I don't.
why. I mean, I'm like,
Yeah,
oh gosh, you
yeah,
know,
that would be the. But
yeah, I yeah. So, if what do you want to say? I'm like, I want to ask the questions. I'm going to ask it. So, what do you want to say to the devil? If anything, you may not want to say anything to the devil. I don't know.
Oh, those are in the front of the book on a different page, because that wasn't part of my questions.
That
Those
was,
were the ones those standard questions we were using from way back in the
yeah,
beginning.
yeah,
Where did
that
you
was,
get those from?
well, honestly, CJ, I just sort of remembered that was one of the questions that we would post, and then
I know, but where did it come from originally? Was it in this book?
I want to say it was from one of the earlier chapters in Tarot Wisdom.
I'm looking. I just want to know. I don't know why that's important to me, but that's what I'm talking about, Kurt. Details like that are important to me.
What do I nurture? Gosh, and I might have to go back and look. I may have pulled that question from somewhere. From
How
a
have I been a fool? How has it helped me?
Or-
Or do I need to be more foolish? The magician. So for the fool, there was only one set of questions, and that was not it. At least one that I.
CJ, to answer your question, I may very well have pulled that from a different source,
Yeah, I think, okay.
and I'll go back and look to see.
That's okay. That's okay. It's not in the book. Okay, so what did we want to say to the devil?
Yeah, you have a.
Jared, stop it.
I don't know. kitty.
Oh,
Oh, Moo. Oh, and she'll let you hold her.
Oh yeah, she sleeps with me.
Oh, what a
Aw.
sweetheart.
But then so does my cat at home.
Hmm. Mine, it's so weird not having my babies home, but
Um,
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I would say to the devil. I mean, I think my quintessential question is when I'm at a particular state is why. I always want to kind of know why. Because it's about understanding.
right.
Like I want to be able to understand. And so I think that I would go to why I don't, so let's talk about I was talking to about a family member who um, has self-medicated for all of these decades, and watching him move in and out of different parts of his life, very deep, painful parts. I mean, entire losses of his children, all of his kids, sort of like disowning, all of that kind of, it's a painful, painful, painful journey. And I want to know, I want to understand why. Right. So there is,
Why
I mean,
he's
there's
going through that?
yeah, I mean, why is, I mean, I get it, right? But there's a part of me that doesn't get it too. I mean, I want to know, I want to understand. I realize, I know, I get all of the, like it's for his personal growth, or this is an opportunity for him to learn. It's for an opportunity to do this, and da, 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 da. And then some
Yeah,
people
but like
learn and
that's
some people
not 20
don't.
years or 30 years or like, my God,
Yeah,
give me a break.
right. There's this part of me that doesn't quite, understand.
Like I'll buy that for a little while,
Yeah.
but
So I
20
don't-
years, that's going to be tough for me to buy.
This kind of thing that.
So then I guess that 20 years is when you like leave the collar on yourself. Like you just choose to ignore the fact that it'll slip off.
Yeah, you want the color, right? You're
Yeah,
like,
it's comforting.
yeah,
Feels
It's like
good.
a-
It's fuzzy.
it's fuzzy, soft, and well, it's this. I don't want, um,
And then Denise, I want to ask y'all something about the True Heart deck here in a minute.
okay.
The devil.
So, yeah, that would be how I would, just.
So what would we ask the devil?
So for me, it's why, but
Why? Well, obviously the why is for us to continue to do whatever work, right? So then I just wasted, so here's how I see it. I just wasted my question by asking why, because now I want to know something that I don't know the answer to.
Okay.
I don't know what that is because I seem to know the answers. And I'm not saying that in a obnoxious way.
no,
Like, I'm in a mood like I've not been myself for the last 2 days.
okay.
I'm in a mood.
Well, and you showed up today. I love that.
Oh, well, yeah, there's no question about that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying I hear the edge in myself.
Yeah.
And I already know that. I mean, my daughter and I fought, like, it's just been like, I already know that. But so I want to know whatever I need to ask the devil, I need to ask him something that I don't know the answer to. Like, because then if I ask him something that I know the answer to, it's a waste of my question. And like,
Sure.
of listening for an answer, because I don't need to listen for that answer. But I don't know. I mean, what do you ask them? Like, Kurt, what are you going to ask?
I don't know. I think why is a really good. I think that's a really good question.
And for me, it's not like why and like in a pleading why. It's like I need to know why and now. It's like that moment. It's like that. It's like you have the answer to this. I know you do. You need to, spill it, right? And then sometimes it's sort of like a pleading, a soft, hurt from a small or hurt place, yeah. So Chris and I have been rewatching the Harry Potter series, the film, right? And there is a character in the fifth book, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, and her name is Dolores Umbridge. Dolores Umbridge, don't you love that?
Oh yeah, she's the headmistress, right?
Headmistress.
Oh.
She's got that cloying, she's I think she's the sadist, the one who likes to inflict pain.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So she's sadistic. And it's just like, the way that there is, her special quill.
Yes.
Quill, but then,
Mhm.
when they're writing lines, the lines are then written in their flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And, this whole notion or idea, this play on, deep down inside, as they're pleading with the why, the deep down inside, she answers, deep down inside, you know that you deserve to be punished, is her response.
And so I guess that the answer to how to get beyond the illusion of, not being able to take off the collar or not being able to slip out of the chains is to understand that we don't deserve to be punished. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's that's the lie, right? So
Yeah.
that moment when she tells them, that's the lie. And so that we really don't. And that to me is what's so heartbreaking.
Well, and even the name Umbridge, right, is very reminiscent of Umbra, which is shadow, right? So yeah.
Yes.
I hesitate to give any kind of compliment to what's her name?
Rowling.
Rowling, because she's really a archaic, very not so nice person. But
I don't know much about her.
she is very anti-trans, extremely anti-trans.
Oh
very,
no, that's not
very. Yeah, she has gone like on an anti-trans crusade.
I did not know that. I didn't
Oh
realize
yes.
that. Pardon my ignorance. I didn't.
Yeah, to the point where Daniel Radcliffe had to come out and basically say that he doesn't want he's completely, disassociating himself with J.K. Rowling, and yeah.
Was this a long time ago?
No, it's now. A long time ago. Yeah, no, and the sad thing is that a lot of her fans are LGBTQ.
Yeah,
so,
I would think.
And they have, yeah, and she's completely, abandoned them basically.
Oh.
So, yeah, that's in the LGBTQ community, they're like, yeah, enjoy Harry Potter, but don't buy new copies of it. Don't give her any more money.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, she's so incredibly wealthy that
yeah.
That's too bad.
So can I ask you a question? You have True Heart?
I do. Let me go get it. It's over in the other room, so I'll be right back.
Well, I mean, I have the book and the card here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right over here. I'm already here. Okay. What's your question?
So
I
have the devil card. I have the card pulled. Here's the card.
Okay. Oh yeah. That's on the picture for the event.
Okay. Now, I hadn't read how this book works. I was just assuming, and I assumed correctly, but I was assuming when I would read the things in here and it goes what's below it in just with the little quips of words are high vibe and low vibe. And so I assumed on everyone that high vibe was if it turned up right side up and low vibe was if it was reversed. So today I start reading the devil. And if you turn to page 116, that's the page the devil's on. And it says high vibe, release, awareness, liberation, choice, sexuality. Low vibe, ego, addiction, lust, coda, temptation, illusion, weakness, debauchery, delusion, materialism. So remember, we talked about high vibe is right side up, low vibe is, so I looked and I was like, well, that doesn't make sense because low vibe, so I'm thinking it should read high vibe where low vibe is and low vibe where high vibe is if low vibe equals reverse. So then I was like, well, this is confusing me. Let me go see if it says in the front of the book how to read this because I never read up on how to read it. I just assumed I knew. And in fact, it says the reversals of the cards on page 21 are the low vibe.
So
It's
a lot-
opposite and I'm confused and it's confusing me and I don't, and that's very frustrating to
So
me.
a lot of pagan decks will take the reading as the way that book does, right? Because in paganism there is no quote unquote devil. So
Okay, no, you're not understanding.
no, I am understanding. I'm understanding exactly.
You can't switch how you read high vibe and low vibe for one card out of the whole fucking book.
No, you don't. No. You're not understanding what I'm saying. That they want you to read all those things that you said as for high vibe as the devil upright, because in pagan traditions, the devil is seen as positive because the devil is the horned god or the bringer of knowledge to humanity and so on.
This is opposite of what tarot wisdom says.
Exactly, because actually she does say that also in tarot wisdom. It's not opposite, it's both and.
I'm very aggravated today. I'm just letting y'all know.
Okay. We'll come back to that later then, maybe. Yeah, sometimes, I mean, I hear what you're saying, that sort of when you work in different systems, and you jump around in different systems, which I'm doing all the time. And so some days I'm like, how do they want me to read that? How should I read that? Or how are they suggesting?
Well, I'm not even going to read it like that, depending on what deck I'm using. I'm going to read it how I see fit to read it in that reading.
Yeah, I think you get to do that. You certainly get to do that.
Well, and Pollock gives the example of that where her partner couldn't read the person that she read every week, so Pollock did it.
Yeah.
And the devil card was the first card that came up in the reading, and she
was, oh, my favorite card.
She was like, yeah, my favorite card. So yeah, and so to that person, the devil card was extremely positive.
Stop it.
Yeah, I mean,
So like you'll see in some of the examples that I have, some of these devil cards are not at all negative in any way. And so when you look at them upright, what you get is a very, very sexual image. You do not get a repressive image at all. And so the reading that CJ just gave for the high vibe would very much go with that.
right. Well, I'll forward the link. I was watching there's another channel. Um, and I was watching her lesson on the devil, another YouTube channel, her lesson on the devil. And she did talk about the I guess it's the Crowley deck,
Yeah,
where
oh,
the devil card is very much, I mean, it's a very
yeah.
phallic imagery in that
It's a
particular.
satyr. Yeah. It's not a devil technically. It's a satyr. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's these, I think that understanding, that you going back to I know usually we talked about this early on when we first kind of established the group, and I was a little more active in asking questions and stuff like that, which I hope to get back to, which I will get back to. But one of the questions was, do you read reversals, right? I think I posted a blog,
Right.
and I said, who reads reversals, who doesn't? And there was some activity about it. And I haven't read reversals in 20 years. I've started reading to me, there's enough inverse meanings represented in other cards, right? Or
Right. I don't read reversals either.
I don't read reversals. And
Yeah.
so, and I know some people they do, right? They read reversals, and that's perfectly fine. And I think it's true. I think there's so many other cards that can get at the same thing when they're read upright. So
So if a reversed card comes up, y'all flip it?
Yeah.
yeah, and actually I very rarely do I ever get a reversed card, because I'm so I'm so careful about how I shuffle.
Right, and I've been doing that too for right now.
Yeah, I mean, but there's going to be a point at which, even if because I think we talked about it, CJ, because when your hand is hurting and shuffling is hard, that maybe kind of spreading the cards out and sort of drawing cards that way. But when you gather the cards up, I know some people will take the cards, they'll take the deck, they won't shuffle in a traditional sense. They'll just take the cards,
Right.
they'll just do this.
But then I had the problem before we started this group, that when I would not pay as close attention like you do. And right now, I just feel like right now, while I'm getting gooder at it, that I should keep them all upright.
Yeah, because you're learning. I mean,
but so like I would get a reading where like literally well over half of the cards, and these weren't huge giant readings, but they weren't 3-card readings either, would all be reversed. Well, I can't read that reading. That's too many reversals.
Yeah,
I don't mean that I can't do it. I'm saying it's not, like, it didn't feel right.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And it's funny that you say that, because we already have an established understanding that the card in its upright position is how we're supposed to sort of read it, right? That's the I don't know what's the word I'm trying to that's the standard.
And and going in that vein, right, that the relationship between the lovers and the devil, for example, the lovers is inherent in the devil and vice versa, so they both contain the other.
Yeah.
There's within one, there's the possibility of the other.
Yes. So, and it doesn't, here we go. Hey, Kurt, can we go ahead and look at your,
yes,
go through the gallery? Because I'm really curious.
There's a lot of them. So
were we able to kind of answer your question, CJ? Yeah, kind of. Okay.
So this one here, this is the Llewellyn Classic, which is very close to Rider-Waite, and the in prominence here is the pentagram reversed, which of course is the human body upside down, or reason at the bottom, and sexuality at the top. We have the folks in the chains here.
Mhm.
The Baphomet, and so on. The basically the magician, the sort of take on the magician and the Hierophant pose that Pollock talks about.
Yeah.
So you have those elements. You got the black background. Interestingly, I believe that's fire, and it's catching fire to his own tail, which she talks a little bit about that too. So CJ, this is what I was referring to, like
Yeah.
this deck
The
here.
tail that's on fire belongs to the man.
Oh, is it attached? Okay, yeah, it is. So it is attached
Yeah.
to the man.
The tail
That's yeah, 'cause
that's
she,
wrapped around the pillar he's on is Baphomet's tail.
okay. Oh, I see. Yeah, the tail is the man's, because I remember she said that it was the man's tail, but I didn't
But
quite.
then the woman's tail is this beautiful red flower
Yeah.
of some
Yeah.
sort.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The receptive, the feminine, the
Yeah, I love this card. So before reading Pollock, what I learned from reading Pollock, is that I always and I was familiar with pagan decks essentially supplanting the devil with Cernunnos, which is that's basically been done for over 20 years in pagan decks, and I always thought it was kind of a cop out, because what does Cernunnos have to do with the devil other than they both have horns, etc.
horn. Yeah. the horn.
But come to find out, the whole association with the god Enki and the whole and the association with Venus, and Venus hidden as opposed to Venus visible, and all of that, and then and the whole idea of Enki, and you can, as this Prometheus like figure that brings knowledge to humanity and all of that, and then the also the association with the wisdom, the serpent wisdom in the garden and all of that, right? So here, in other words, you basically have Cernunnos introducing or blessing sexuality as a means by which the human beings can understand and discover themselves. And so this would be the high vibe of the devil card, right? This would be, all of those things that you listed as the high vibe, right? And this is an upright. And also too, Pollock touches on this, and I'm not sure in which book, maybe in both of them, about the devil card sort of inherently insinuating Kundalini energy also. So the raising of energy through sexuality as a means of liberation. And here, this is very obvious what we have here. This is Pan, right? Satyr with the
What's Satyr?
half goat, half human. Associated astrologically with Capricorn, of course, and it's actually tarot. The Tarot Deciphered book, which is M.M. Moline's book, who did Tabula Mundi, right? That book has the best description of Capricorn astrological sign I've ever seen. Like, I mean, the most succinct and best description that I've seen. I know a lot about Capricorns because I was married to one for the longest time. And this doesn't come from her book, but what I was always understood about Capricorns is that Capricorns excel at either being gangsters or being priests. So you have the two aspects of that there, and so you have the two symbols for Capricorn too, the mountain goat, which allows one to climb and so forth, as Pollock talked about, that sort of achieve those ego-driven goals, versus the sea goat, which the idea of the sea goat is very sacrificial, like
Mhm.
giving of oneself for others, which is also a potential aspect of Capricorn. So you have both of those. So now here is Tabula Mundi,
Mhm.
and we have a satyr in blue. This is the hourglass of Saturn. So,
Mhm.
you
And
know,
what does that mean?
Saturn,
Oh, and there's
so
Saturn.
Saturn is associated with just really typically very hard learned things that are learned and dealt with over.
And so what does the hourglass mean? Like time's running out to learn this?
Well, yeah, Saturn, basically that there's the mortality, that well, and that Saturn, that I mean, the god Saturn was Father Time, right? Was yeah. So, but you also have the association with humanity here with double helix. You have the I, is the Hebrew letter Ayin here, representing the I. In other words, what are we allowing ourselves to see? You know, are we allowing ourselves to see past the illusions that we ourselves create? You know,
Mhm.
Do you think this card is making me angry?
are we allowing ourselves to see past the illusions that we create, is the question that this I is asking. And this is not a traditional, and again, here we also, we have the image of kind of this horned god, fecund, nature, satyr type, with the green man on his crotch here. We'll see this. So this one in the center, this is of course Pollock's own shining tribe, and we have the devil as the guardian of the doorway, which we'll see this in another card too. What I like here that she brought out in Tarot Wisdom, talking about this, is that there's all these doorways, but there are no doors. So in other words, the barriers, we make the barriers ourselves. Wait, but we lost Denise, I think. Hopefully she'll pop back on.
Yeah, but she wouldn't have left without saying goodnight.
No, I know. I think maybe her internet, something must have gone on with her internet.
Or her computer died or something. Well,
Maybe.
here, let me text her on the phone.
Okay.
Give me a second.
Okay, I'm gonna pause the recording while we're doing.
But no, keep going with what
keep
you were
going.
doing. I need you to finish what you were saying, because
Oh.
no doors. Hold on, let me write what you were saying. You said no doors, which I already had read that in the book, but then you said
the
because
door,
we
Yeah.
create
we create the doors. There aren't
our barriers. We create the barriers.
Yeah, we create the door. The doorway exists, the path exists, but we create the.
Well, and now the only way through that path is through the devil, which I had already written that in my notes from before. Okay, now you can pause it.
Okay.
If
If I can find, I don't know if I can pause the.
this card is making me very, very angry.
Well, this devil here, which is.
No, not this, not the specific.
No. I understand. This one isn't even angry at all. He's even got a smile on his face a little bit. He's got the eye in the center, open eye in the center of his forehead. He's got an eye here. So this is all about what's being seen. It's got the serpent, reminiscent of the serpent in the garden. He's sitting. Oh wow! I just noticed this. He's sitting on a Shiva lingam, right? The Shiva lingam is
Again, it's frustrating when I don't know what the fuck you're saying.
I'm gonna explain it to you. Okay. A Shiva lingam, and a Shiva lingam is a deity. It's this thing that he's sitting on. Okay. and it's a representation of Shiva, of the god Shiva's penis.
Well, they
Okay.
were talking about it in the book being a half cube.
Well, that yeah, it's typically a half cube, but this is not a half cube. This is a Shiva lingam. Okay, this is very definitely a Shiva lingam, and that's very, yeah,
I
that's
don't get it. What's it supposed to look like?
it looks exactly like this. It's this it doesn't literally look like a penis, but anybody familiar with Indian spirituality would know what this is. This is it represents Shiva's penis.
Is
It
the
represents-
bottom of it part of it, the like
Yeah,
keyhole?
yeah, this whole thing that he's sitting on, this whole structure. And
And
then
it's, what is it? It represents a god's penis?
yes. So we're talking about, oh, Denise is, okay, she's on, but her audio is not on yet. Okay, we're talking about this, that the satyr is sitting on here, which is a Shiva lingam, right? So in tantra, you hear the terminology lingam and yoni, lingam being the penis and yoni being the vagina. This structure here, if you go into a Shiva temple or into a lot of people's homes, millions of people's homes that will have this, and they will worship it as the god Shiva, and it represents his penis. So basically it's a god's penis, literally. I mean, that's what it represents. And for some people, quite literally. So you have, and then of course you have these mushrooms, these phallic mushrooms growing up everywhere.
And then
Which
you
are-
see it off to the right.
Yeah, right. Which are both, you know, phallic in their shape, but also the fecundity of mushrooms, the fact that mushrooms will grow anywhere. And mushrooms grow in darkness, actually. Mushrooms grow in complete darkness.
Yeah, I think that's where it was going with that.
So the idea that even in complete darkness where you have no hope, there's still something that's growing in there. And we have these grapes here, which are reminiscent of Dionysus and also Pan. So you have the whole, you know, the whole sexuality. This is a very positive, very sexual, sexually liberating, powerful version of the devil. Actually, all three of these are. So these would be very positive cards that if they were to come up. This one less so, only because the folks are, but they're not chained. If anything, they look like they might
No.
be asleep.
He's
Yeah.
asleep.
Yeah,
She's almost like in this like dance move state.
yeah, yeah. Wouldn't you love to go in a disco and see something like you go to? I mean, this almost looks like something that you would have seen like in a heavy metal magazine in the 80s or something.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know this is a Shiva lingam because Emma Moline, I know for a fact, loves Ganesh, and Ganesh is the son of Shiva. So I'm sure she knows what that is. Steampunk devil.
Mm.
And I just thought of this. It reminds me of the devil in Futurama. You remember the robot devil in Futurama? One of my favorite renditions of the devil actually is the robot devil in Futurama. So the robots have their own version of the devil, and it's basically they do a Futurama version of the devil went down to Georgia. But it's really freaking fun. And then this is awesome, Cthulhu.
Cthulhu.
And this, I mean, you can't get more shadow than Cthulhu,
Yeah.
right? Because the whole point of Lovecraft's work, right, is not seeing the creature itself, it's the anticipation of seeing the creature, right? And that, and the thing is that in being stuck in the devil is being stuck in fear, you know. And of course, you know, Pollock talks about the fear of women's empowerment and women's spirituality and women's sexuality, which led to, you know, the witch hunts and so on. And this is the most disturbing of all the devil cards, probably. And I didn't really read up too much on her, but I believe that the card, if I remember correctly, the card is asking you to focus on what in your life is in fact corrupts. You know, man, I like that steampunk. I do like the steampunk devil, and really, in there's this phrase in a Jethro. Well, but the whole and in the Middle Earth movies, right, bring this up to the not so much the books, but the films, you know, bring up that whole notion of, you know, the armies of Isengard being mechanized and you know, in industrialization, in over industrialization as being evil, you know, as, in other words, so much is being sacrificed, so much of nature, etc., is being sacrificed for this mechanization, right? Which, of course, mechanization is associated with colonization, and we get into everything that entails. I'm really surprised none of the decks that we're looking at here actually have a dragon as the devil, but in Western mythology, as in British and continental European mythology, the dragon would typically be, the dragon represents that being being stuck in the physical hoarding of wealth, or, you know, ego, etc. The dragon Smaug, you know, is all about the treasure and so on, and, you know. So I didn't read up on the Bella Rosa either, but I just think these cards are just really fascinating.
Wow.
Is that the whatchamacallit deck, the Chrysalis?
Yeah. The Green Knight. So my frame of reference for the Green Knight, and I'm ashamed to admit this because I am a literature person, but my frame of reference for the Green Knight is the early 80s movie with Sean Connery as the Green Knight, which was fantastic. It was a fantastic movie. Where basically the Green Knight challenges Gawain to cut off his head, and so he lets Gawain take a whack at him, but he hits the Green Knight in the back of the head, but it doesn't cut his head off. And so Gawain has a year to come back and get his own head chopped off by the Green Knight, and the whole thing is, I would imagine, I didn't read up on it, but I would imagine the whole thing is Gawain fearing the anticipation of getting his head chopped off, and, you know, overcoming that fear. And Gawain actually does show back up to get his head chopped off, and he doesn't get his head chopped off in the end. But and I just think this is a fascinating image, so I included it. Got the little people in their little fishbowl, and that's kind of, in a way, that's kind of like, I just thought of this now. It's kind of like, you know, how our society has been, or we're moving out of this stage now, where for the last year and a half or so, we've all kind of been in our little glass, you know, we've related to each other behind these screens, which basically we're looking at, you know,
Mm,
flat screens, or we're looking at each other through glass, as it were, or through cameras. So, and
Yeah.
it does feel after a while very, very confining, very limiting, like that. And for a lot of people, I mean, there is still a certain. I have a friend right now on Facebook who's ranting about how her rights are being violated because she's being made to wear a mask at her work because she's not vaccinated. So for a lot of people, they still feel like there's this devil or this big brother, this malicious big brother that's looking, you know, manipulating things, you know.
mhm. Hmm.
So here is Shadowscape.
Wow.
Oh wow,
Movement in that.
I know, and there's a. I mean, I can relate to this. I've been here. I mean, I can
Mhm.
relate to this. And speaking of lovers, there's a heart.
Well, but in Shadowscapes, I think there's a heart in like almost every single card.
Yeah,
That's part of that thing, you know?
yeah.
I'm gonna
The
have to
wing-
read more on that Ostara Tarot. I like that.
The
Shadowscapes.
The wings are bat-like here, and
The devil. The Hierophant.
What is the bird? What is the bird carrying?
Wheel of Fortune. Hermit.
is that a crown?
I don't know. It looks, it could be.
This could
Okay,
be.
so see, see the figure at the bottom?
That's a crown.
Yeah, that's reaching up to the bird. and
Oh yes.
So they're reaching up to that.
Um,
Hmm.
uh, 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 uh. So I don't think it really talks about that. But it's like, you know, if you can break free, I mean, it's not talking about that in here. And I can read this if you want me to. It just kind of wasn't in the mood tonight. But you have to be able to get out of that place in there, in that womb, that cave, that and see the chains she's wearing aren't even being held by any devil. They're being held by a lock, and it's like she can put her crown back on. You know what I mean?
Is that a key that's right above her? Sort of.
It's a scepter.
A scepter, okay.
Or no, it could be a key though. It could be a key.
It looks like a key,
It looks
Yeah.
like a key.
like an abstract key,
Yeah, yeah.
a key in theory. So
Well, and then, when it's abstract, it's a key, but you can't tell that it's a key because it's abstract. And if you're not looking at it in that way,
in that state, you can't see it.
you can't see it.
So she feels the walls closing in on her. She's oblivious to the fact that she is not completely surrounded. Aha, therefore not captivated. That there is the wide world open to either side. So she's like oblivious to that. The skies cry with songs of beauty and freedom, just like the bird. And here I'm putting this in there, just like the bird holding the crown, the raven holding the crown. But she tucks her head down to hide in fear. Walls and shackles, though it is only a thin thread to bind her, red as her heart's blood. And the key is so close, so close. So it is the key.
Yeah.
Look up, you wish to cry at her. Raise your eyes and look around. Her ears are deaf to any voice but that of the devil. All she hears and feels is the devil dancing above her, driving her, goading her, pressing down upon her. Tap, tap, tap goes the dancing of his hooves in a merry, mocking rhythm. Tap, tap, tap in the seductive patterns of entrapment of the willing. Tap, 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 he dances and he laughs with the knowledge that it is with such ease he can hold a vibrant spirit captive. Look up. And faintly the voice pierces through the stones and seeps up into her body, and she reaches out. Losing independence, addiction, and enslavement, caught up in the material, overindulgence, choosing to stay in the dark, overindulging in pleasures, lust, and desire, feeling hopelessness close in and limit the options. The devil plays on your desires with a masterful torch. Break free from the puppeteer's strings by looking beyond the material blockades and temptations. The devil has many faces. For this piece, he did seem to wish to take on the form of a musician or a merry capering beast. Seductive in his rhythms, mesmerizing, enchanting. It is easy to deny an evil-faced demon, much harder not to fall victim to the trap that lulls the weariness and defenses, then creeps within like the thin and echoing strands of a song that will not leave the head. You can see in this progression of sketches, he went from a more human proportioned creature to something more otherworldly. He became drawn and angular like a spider lurking in the dark recesses of the human heart. Though these are visible incarnations of the devil, in truth, he is but the whispering weakness that everyone must overcome within themselves. He weaves an intricate webwork around the human heart. He understands what beats in that precious ruby gem. He knows the deepest desires, the fears, the doubts, and understanding all of that, he can then architect a beautiful spider's web of lies, illusions, and half-truths to hold that heart in thrall. The devil is a master puppeteer. He manipulates the strings with such a delight and an adept hand, like a stage magician, that these artifices of wood and twine appear fully lifelike, even perhaps imbued with the belief themselves that they are alive and real. From the puppet that he swings, a little soul reaches out, breaking free.
So it's a matter of which voices we choose to listen to.
I guess I'm going to have to pull my Shadowscapes deck out, but you know, y'all, that's a hard deck to read from because literally, I don't care if you're 10 years old, you cannot see the things on the cards. You just can't see them.
You're gonna need one of those big old magnifying glasses.
It's so that's why I have not chosen not to pull it out for any of this.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't put as above, so below on the same page.
No, there's a reason for that.
Oh,
Okay.
So here is the, this is from Wildwood, and here we have Guardian, the
Mhm.
ancestral guardian.
Ancestral.
And this is
well,
the,
that's kind of cool.
yeah. And this guardian is basically serving the same purpose as the devil in the, in Pollux.
Polyps.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I go back to Star Wars, you know, Empire Strikes Back, where Luke goes into the cave and he has to defeat his shadow. He has to face his shadow essentially to complete his training.
Mhm.
You know. Now this is the, of course, the as above. Now her take, Barbara Moore's take on Lummis is interesting. She it's actually, it's a very balanced and healthy take on the whole devil concept. She basically said it's a card of sexual pleasure, sex for, it's essentially, she takes it as sex for sex sake, but she said it comes at a cost, you know. So in her reading of it, she's saying that, yeah, we can have sex for sex sake, we can have, you know, all that, but it does come at a cost, right? And of course, basically the notion is like the late harvest, or Lammas is like February 2nd, right?
Is it a holiday or something?
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it Candlemas, or is that different?
Candlemas is February 2nd.
February 2nd. So
I thought Lammas, Lammas is not August?
Oh, you're right.
What's it
Isn't it like
about?
Lunasa?
You're right. Hold on. I'm gonna look it up.
Lammas
Well,
and
that's what I'm
Lunasa?
doing.
Okay.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
a lot of the
But it's
Maybe.
Christian.
pagan well, some of the pagan holidays take their names from Christian holidays and and vice versa. But Lammas is, you're right.
Sunday, August 1st.
It's August, yeah. Because Lu is literally, Lu is a sun god, right? Lucifer, sun god, right? Lu is the pagan, I mean, is Celtic sun god. So the mass of Lu, yeah.
Mhm.
So that would be, so this is like the sun at really high, you know, this is after the summer solstice.
Well,
Right.
it also says School is another name associated with August 1st, which is also the date of the festival of St. Peter's Chains and the Celtic festival of whatever. But I wonder if St. Peter's Chains have something to do with why she also chose it.
Could very well be, because of course
Yeah.
St. Peter was crucified upside down, where the legend says Peter was crucified upside down, which would be the inverted pinnacle.
Yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
there you go.
The escape of Peter from his chains is noted in the feast of August 1st.
Okay.
Okay. That could very
One
well
of the 12 most important celebrations of the Roman Catholic Church, commemorating yeah.
That's really cool. I did not know about the Peter's chains.
Well, but it hasn't, again, Kurt, I'm reading it, I'm learning it, hearing it for the first time, but it hasn't explained to me what St. Peter's chains are, and that frustrates me.
Oh.
Well, then we have to look that up.
I clicked on it and all I get is what I read you. That's all I get. And it goes on yada, yada, yakking about.
You have to go deeper than that. This is welcome to academia. I mean, this is,
Yeah.
But I did go and it didn't give me what I wanted.
Saint Peter in chains is what I'm getting.
The apostle Peter was jailed in Jerusalem, shackled and iron chain for preaching about Jesus. Hold on. The apostle Peter was jailed in Jerusalem, shackled in an iron chain for preaching about Jesus. The night before his trial, St. Peter was said to be released from the chain by an angel and led out of prison. So that's what that refers to.
Okay.
According to Time magazine.
So would this be a positive take on
Yes.
this card?
Yes, very much so. Because it's just it's saying, I mean, Barbara Moore's reading of like interpretation or whatever from the book says nothing about Peter's chains, although I think she is drawing on that. She just doesn't put it in her book. But she's saying that you know, that you know, you can enjoy passion, you can give way to that, you know, you can celebrate that part of yourself, but you know, there will be a cost, you know. Oh, the Jerrys are running around. You can hear them dancing and stuff in the ceiling. You hear that? Oh yeah. So here we have Robin Wood, and I think this one in particular kind of represents that mental health. You know, we're talking about you know, how sometimes it feels like you're down deep in a hole and you just can't get out.
Can't get out.
You know.
Mental health, addiction, all those.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, thematically, I did these because they both have the chains in it. But I really like this card from the Bonfire. And Bonfire, it's a deck that is based on tattoo art.
Wow.
But I thought this was kind of a take on the
Well, it's kind of like the one Denise showed us.
yeah.
Because it's got the cards and the alcohol and the money symbols and
the positioning of the devil figure and the child is very much the it's very much like it's not a child, it's a woman actually.
It's not a child, yeah.
But it's very, I took it to be kind of like the Madonna and child, but it's a devil and a woman. So I kind of, you know, but I really like, I like this artwork. This is from the Star Wars Tarot.
I knew it.
And it represents, so this is a character that I know nothing about. It's apparently a Sith Lord from some lore, some like Star Wars lore, you know, obscure Star Wars lore that I don't know anything.
Is that what it says? Because like be Kylo Ren's back or something?
It's not Kylo Ren. I looked it up and it's Darth somebody, and it's not Kylo Ren. It's something from the whole Star Wars universe that I was not aware of, but I still like the image. But you could take it as Kylo Ren too, though, you know, I mean, because he very much is in that state, you know, he's very much, you know, torn between, he's feeling shackled, you know, and I mean, but really I mean, they could have had a devil card where they just showed that broken helmet of Darth Vader. You know, that's all they would have had to have shown is Kylo Ren looking at that helmet of Darth Vader, because he's just so, you know, shackled to that, you know, to being Darth Vader's grandson, you know.
Okay, so now here's what I'm just on here. I'm gonna let you do your whole spiel through here, but I have a question about the middle card and I had it pulled here. So she went over her whole explanation in 78 Degrees in Tarot Wisdom about the pentagram right side up and upside down and the 5 points and all of the
Yeah,
whatever. This is not that.
no, so this is Aleister Crowley's hexagram. This is a thalamic hexagram. From
Again, I don't even know the
from
words
the-
you're saying. The
from
thalamic.
the order thalama is Greek, meaning, what does it mean? Like happiness?
Like I'm real
Something like that,
frustrated. I'm
right?
about to quit over like not understanding. Like I'm highly.
So all you really
frustrated.
have to know about this is that this symbol was popularized by Aleister Crowley when he formed the OTO, when he broke off from the Golden Dawn and formed the OTO. And the Aleister Crowley himself called himself the Beast, and associated the number 666 with himself and all this kind of stuff, because he was all about indiscriminate sex magic. He was all about basically as debauched as he could possibly be. At least that's how he wanted the world to see him, right?
So are you saying that that's a bad thing?
Not necessarily, but he wanted that kind of attention, right? Because if you get
But
that
this what's this called? A hexagram?
hexagram, like for example, the Star of David is a hexagram,
Mhm.
right? This just happens to be a different formation of a hexagram.
And it's came from,
Aleister Crowley.
he made it up?
I don't know that he made it up, but he widely put it into use.
And it stands for, in a synopsis of 2 sentences.
It could stand for a lot of things, but it's what he used as opposed to a pentagram. It basically means the same. Basically,
What's the
represents-
difference between that and a pentagram?
Not much. I mean, it's not much. Without going into like volumes and volumes of esoteric text, not much.
Okay, thank you.
But I kind of like this because he's kind of undeniably sexy. Like, I mean, that's the point, right? He's just this,
Mhm.
he's the,
Isn't the devil always undeniably sexy?
well, not in a lot of these cards though.
Yeah.
I meant in life in
Like
general.
the concept, yeah,
Well,
attractive, alluring, yeah.
sometimes he has a beard and hasn't showered,
Mhm.
but and then you've got this, he's leading the person here, and the person is of course in anguish and such.
Yeah.
But to me, this is kind of like very Jim Morrison-esque in a
Mhm.
way. Oh, and I see the chains tattooed on his arm, as is the ram.
Mhm.
But he's got those invisible puppet strings there, like
Yeah.
it's almost like they're there, but they don't exist really.
Right.
You could just walk off.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and in fact, that's what Jim Morrison did to women. I mean, Jim Morrison famously drove women crazy. The ones that got involved with him, as did Aleister Crowley. I mean,
They're narcissists.
yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. That's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, they're so incredibly charming. Even
Yeah.
malignant narcissists are incredibly charming at the beginning.
Right. That's perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Y'all are killing me.
So we could say that the devil is a narcissist. There we go. That's that. Somebody write that down.
The
That's
devil
good.
is a narcissist.
The devil is a narcissist.
But narcissist is based on
Narcissus, who was
narcissus.
enthralled with his own image. But this guy's looking in the mirror though.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah. There are
And-
whole specializations of
Mhm.
folks in psychology, clinical psychology, who focus on narcissists, and
Oh yeah.
it's one of the
Like
dark,
this is what Donald Trump thinks he looks like.
like
This
the
is what
dark
Donald Trump-
triad.
This is what Donald Trump tells himself he looks like,
Mhm.
except blonde, of course. But
And
Yeah.
with ruddy skin.
but this is you know,
And then you have our poor coyote.
yeah. Well,
Is
this
that
is
coyote?
That's a fox,
Or
I
is it a
think.
fox?
it's a jackal, I believe.
Oh, it's a
I
jackal.
believe it's a jackal.
I have the deck. I should go pull it.
Believe he's a jackal, but I like it
Maybe it's a
because-
fox. Look at that fuzzy tail. Does a jackal have a
yeah,
fuzzy
maybe-
tail?
I don't know, but if I
Hmm.
remember correctly, it's a jackal, but I could be wrong.
Mhm.
Well,
But
I
I like-
we've been talking about everything's positive and negative depending on what card and what deck. And I like this one is completely different with self-empowerment and ambition.
Mhm. Well, and I think, right, because self-empowerment can be this incredibly, incredibly positive thing.
Mhm.
And so can ambition. You have to have ambition to be able to
Yeah.
um, to basically, if you work with your goals. Let me answer this real quick. Sorry, guys.
And so go on with the good church. And was there anything you had read on the shadow one?
No, or maybe I did, but it was a while back. I didn't really read anything on it because I thought it kind of spoke for itself. Interestingly, it doesn't have a black background. A lot of these have
Well,
black.
because it's a whole different take
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah. And yet not, because I mean,
And so go ahead with the good tarot.
I just I mean, to me, she's just exhausted, you know.
Well, or she could have been the one that ate out of that apple and it has been, I don't want to say acted like a poison, but acted like some type of a sedative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's me making up stories in my head, like the devil in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we don't actually see the devil, but we see what could be his after effects. Or another way to look at this is that she is not flying because she's coveting the I guess that's an apple she's on. And,
Yeah, it's an apple.
and she's and the gold, etc. You know.
Okay, I'm just gonna say it while Denise isn't on here. All I see in that middle card is Richard. I did bring mushrooms with me though.
Oh, you realize I'm gonna have to delete this thing.
What do you mean? We're making pizza.
Okay. Those kind of mushrooms. Like portobello.
Arugula and artichoke hearts and like.
Oh wow. That actually I want that right
I
now.
made the other night. I brought all that with me.
I want that right now. That sounds so good. Nut, go make me that.
Well, whenever you come over, I'll make it.
That sounds
It's
so
not a
good.
lot though. It doesn't come out big or anything. It's like, these are not like giant pizzas.
Yeah. Oh man. Nut.
My friend's dog started on that stuff yesterday,
Yeah.
but again, so her dose is 4 at a time.
Oh, wow. So
Okay,
she's,
that one's out in, but it's late already. It's like going on 10 o'clock and she's sitting at the door meowing. I don't think I should be letting her out because it's not a cat, it's a kitten.
yeah,
I don't think I should be letting her out right now, do you?
well, she can, I mean, does she need to pee?
Well, she has a litter box inside that she knows how to use.
Okay, well then, yeah, probably not
'Cause
let
I
her out.
clean it.
Yeah.
So what should I do? I shouldn't let her out, should I?
I don't think so.
I don't think I need to let you out, sweetheart. I think you should stop the recording.
In order to do that, I've got to go through several screens.
I'm here, I'm back. I don't know if you guys were waiting. I had to go to the restroom.
Oh, okay.
The only emperor is the emperor of ice cream.
Okay, so I'll wait for CJ and then I'll go through this one.
Oh, I'm listening. I'm listening, Kurt.
Oh, okay. So here we have the So Below deck, and what we have is a whole table full of ice cream, and we have an ice cream sundae. And it hit me today that this actually depicts one of my very favorite poems to teach, The Emperor of Ice Cream by Wallace Stevens. So all the chanting to Saraswati, the goddess of learning, is having benefits because I got a lightning strike to connect these two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the poem and then I'm going to explain to you how this is being depicted here. So, call the roller of big cigars, the muscular one, and bid him whip in kitchen cups, concupiscent curds. Let the wenches dawdle in such dress as they are used to wear. Let the boys bring flowers in last month's newspapers. Let B be the finale of scene. The only emperor is the emperor of ice cream. Take from the dresser of deal, lacking the 3 glass knobs, that sheet on which she embroidered fantails once, and spread it so as to cover her face. If her horny feet protrude, they come to show how cold she is and dumb. Let the lamp affix its beam. The only emperor is the emperor of ice cream. So we have in effect here the emperor of ice cream being depicted in the tarot cards. So let's look at the and the question is, who is the emperor of ice cream? Well, we could say the devil. We could also say, anyway. So in this poem, we have a declaration, call the roller of big cigars. What do you think of when you think of big cigars? You think of phallic symbols, right? Big, big smoking penises, essentially. The muscular one in bid him whip. Well, whip there's a double entendre here. Whip meaning whip cream, whipping up cream to make ice cream. Also whip as in potentially whipping a person, right? In kitchen cups, concupiscent curds. Concupiscent is a Roman Catholic term, meaning specifically meaning sexual sin. Okay, kitchen cups, concupiscent curds. Well, what do curds look like? They're white, they're white, squishy, and and so on, as in male ejaculate. Let the wenches dawdle in such dress as they are used to wear. Used here, of course, also has a double entendre as well. So we're talking about probably prostitutes. Let the boys bring flowers in last month's newspapers. Here you have the juxtaposition of boys, young boys, with last month's flowers, meaning,
Newspapers.
well, flowers meaning flowers that you would bring a date, essentially.
Yeah,
wrapped up in last month's newspapers, old newspapers. So you have that juxtaposition of young and old. and the old is also being applied indirectly to the worn out, potentially prostitute. So let be the finale of seem. So seem as in what do things look like? How do we see things? And of course, if you look at something, we always wonder, well, is the way that I'm perceiving it the way it actually is? So this is like an equation. Let be the finale of seem. In other words, let what we actually perceive it to be as it is. The only emperor is the emperor of ice cream. So take from the dresser of deal. So deal is wood. Deal is a kind of wood that was used to make dressers in the 19th century. 19th century as well, in early 20th century, and we're talking about 1918. Here's when this poem was published. So it also, the word deal means deal. In other words, it was a transaction, right? Lacking the three glass knobs. Again, this notion of being used up. Also the dresser in the 19th century, early 20th century, the whole notion of the hope chest, right? What is it? Women were brought up that, from being, say, the age of 10, they're given all these gifts to be placed into their hope chest to take with them when they get married. There's the whole sort of dowry culture, the whole idea of again, and this is very much associated with the devil card because it's very much locking women into a particular path, and only that the path provided by that very limited radius of those chains would be available to them. So for these particular women, if they were not able to be married for whatever reason, as they saw it or as society dictated, they became prostitutes, right? So their hope chest becomes a dresser of deal, or a dresser upon which sexual transactions are meted out, on which she embroidered fantails once. So fantails, you can look at that. You can look at the shape of a fantail, and you can see that as kind of the in the card that we have, the little crunchies sticking out of the ice cream are a little bit phallic, but back in the day they were kind of fantail shaped, back in the early 20th century. So you can see the fantail is kind of reminiscent of that. That sheet and spread it so as to cover her face. The implication there is that she's dead, right? They're covering her face. Okay. If her horny feet protrude, they come. So horny feet, well, that again is a double entendre. Horny has meant horny forever. So, this is again a woman who's traded in her sexuality because again, she had not much other choice probably. And also her feet are gnarled from having been on her feet for so many years and having been used, right? They come, and again, come
Double.
means a couple of different things there. To show how cold she is and dumb meaning silent, but also that's an indictment of society that, oh, look at this woman and where she ended up, right? So the speaker here is not necessarily very sympathetic to the woman. Let the lamp affix its beam. Okay, and we have the eye, the lamp, affixing the beam on the woman. Let the only emperor is the emperor of ice cream. So we can look at that emperor as the devil in one sense, being that this woman, that's the society in the role of the devil is entrapping her in this this plight. And also the fact that even though the speaker is unaware of it, the speaker is complicit in it. But also the emperor of ice cream is death, right, or time. And we have the time association with the devil card in the hourglass of Saturn that we saw on some of the other cards. Because if you like sex, when we uh, not all sexual experiences, of course, but some of them, it's like, you see this, the potential of the sex is better than the sex itself. You see the beautiful Sunday there on the card. But what happens if you leave that out in the sun too long? It gets sticky and gross and
Right.
disgusting, you
Oh.
know. And so, and and a lot of my students, when I've taught this poem, they respond rather well. They, well, you've been with somebody that you really wanted to be with, and you after you're done, you're like, oh, that wasn't so great, that wasn't it, And so, you might eat that, you might get a stomach ache, you might, whatever, But anyway, I
Or anything that looks good, but really.
exactly, right.
Anything.
Oftentimes with me, it's like, ooh, I really want to buy this, role-playing book, or I really want to buy this comic. Oh, it's only $30. It's not bad. And then I read, it's like, I don't even know if it's worth $30, but
Oh, yeah.
exactly. And so, yeah. So now you see what I do for a living, or what I'd like to do for a living. Oftentimes in writing classes, I don't get the opportunity to
To do this stuff. It's fun.
explicate poems, but when I did,
Did you pick it to go with it, or was it in the book?
no, I picked it.
Yeah, he picked it.
Of course I did. Of course I picked it. And then to close, we have Set.
This, yeah.
Yeah, we Seth or Set. Yeah. And this is actually, we just actually passed this point astrologically, the midpoint between, we're closer to the summer solstice now, but we were at this point, and it kind of begs, we should think about, in our dealings with one another and their dealings with people right now, that astrologically there's a lot going on. There's a whole lot going on particularly with the eclipse yesterday. And there's a bunch of stuff going on with Mars and Capricorn, of course, being associated with the devil. That's interesting. I didn't think about that before, but there's a bunch of stuff going on with Mars and Capricorn and such and such and such and such. And so what it amounts to is a lot of potential for impulsive behavior and a lot of potential for volatile behavior. So, and, as they say, knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe. Right. That was
It's half the battle.
yeah. Right. So, but yeah. And Seth kind of gets a bad rap a little bit, but anyway, he had a role to play. Anyway, so that there is our, let's see, how do I get off of this screen?
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you.
How do I
Doing that together?
This? I am trying to stop this sharing.
Hover down
How do we
below,
get-
low, and
It's not letting me.
it won't let me do.
Oh, here it goes. Here it goes. I see it. They moved. I think they may have moved it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there we go. Anything else we need to know about the devil card? I don't know. Then the next we have the tower,
The tower is next.
which is there's many different ways to read the tower as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Yes.
yeah.
Any final thoughts? I don't have any. That's just because I'm tired.
We didn't bring up William Blake, so we probably should bring up William Blake because Pollock talks about him, and she didn't actually, she sort of skirted around it, but she didn't actually say Blake's famous quote. So Blake was very read John Milton very critically, because of course John Milton was the famous Puritan poet who wrote Paradise Lost and so on, and he was a beautiful, very arid, florid writer, but also very political and so forth in his writing. But Blake was very critical of him basically a century later, a little over a century later. He said Milton was of Satan's party and didn't know it. In other words, Milton was really rooting for Satan.
Oh,
And if you read that, right, if you read Paradise Lost, the reason that, so there's two books, right? Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained. Nobody reads Paradise Regained because it's by comparison really, really, really boring, right? Paradise Lost is all about, Satan trying to find his way to Earth, and and all these kind of, like, the fall of the fall, and Satan is the underdog trying to find his way to Earth, and all this other stuff, and that's all exciting, versus Paradise Regained, which is of course about Christ and and so forth. But the one that everybody reads is Paradise
Paradise
Lost.
Lost.
Yeah,
He's rooting for the devil.
yeah. So Milton was of Satan's party, but didn't know it, right? All right. Is everybody good? Let's see. I will now stop. Good night, everyone who may or may not be watching. We get on average 4 views per video. So I guess somebody's watching.
It could be me. I almost always click on them.
Yeah, we get on average four watches. So maybe one person watches, but
On
anyway,
YouTube?
yeah, we get about 4 watches per video.
You could start, can you hashtag on YouTube? I don't know if you want all that traffic. We could also set up a YouTube, like an account, and
Yes.
and it would make it searchable that way. If you wanted to do it, it doesn't.
But we'll sign off for tonight.
Oh yeah. Oh hi. We're still recording. Sorry. That was like
Stop.
unrelated.
And